Sometimes you just have to laugh, because this world is incredibly stupid. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I normally talk about lighter subjects than this, makeup, beauty, and whatnot, but this whole thing has gone into the realm of a fashion beauty trend. I don't know how that happened, but it has. They are now a fashion beauty symbol and icon. People are using them as, I think, most common. Excuse me. I think people are using them most commonly as purse charms. I think that's what I've seen the most. However, people are now saying that they are actually not a cute little innocent little toy or a fashion statement or a purse charm. They are, in fact, a literal representation of a demon. Let's get into it. Yesterday I woke up to a array of YouTube videos. I spent most of the day scrolling through them, and I watched a few of them, but literally my entire feed, like, I could have spent all day just watching YouTube videos about Labubus and Pazu. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, or I actually don't care if I'm saying it correctly, but, and the connection and how the Labubus were designed from the demon Pazu. And so everyone's freaking out because this is the latest fashion trend accessory. And I don't know how they turned into a fashion trend accessory. Were they originally intended to be a fashion trend accessory, or did people just decide that they were going to use them as bag charms? I don't really know, but it's a trend that it has completely taken over. You can go online, and literal fashion institutes have written articles about it. It's a legitimate fashion trend. And this wasn't something I was just going to make a video about because I think it's kind of ugly. And I don't have any desire to go on a rant and shame anybody that thinks that these things are cute, because everybody's into different things. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and honestly, can't judge too hard because it kind of reminds me of the whole, like, troll thing. So they first came out in the 60s, but then they had a resurgence in, I believe it started like in the late 80s through the 90s. The little stupid troll dolls, I think those are ugly too, FYI. I don't get the troll dolls either, but it kind of reminds me of that. I kind of felt like the Labubus were the Gen Z alpha version of the troll dolls. So I was just like, whatever. The trend isn't for me, doesn't really go with my whole aesthetic. I'm a 31-year-old woman. I almost said 30. I was gonna take off a year. But I don't care to carry around a little furry little evil looking face doll around. I do think their faces look a little evil, but just because they look a little, like, devious doesn't necessarily mean that they are demonic or necessarily taken from this Pazu dude. So, but yet Christians were drawing the conclusion online, I believe it originated on TikTok, that this was the origins of the Labubu dolls, and that they were taken from the demon Pazu. So the demon Pazu is taken from, he's a deity, he's a demonic deity, well known in the Babylonian and Assyrian cultures. Ugh. I'm trying to do something. Who needs a Labubu when you have one of these? Use my little monster. Use your little monster. Yes, I love you. Alright. So through the first millennium BCE. And he was known to show with a rather canine face, large eyes, and if you have children, I don't want to scoot them along. For this part, we had a scaly body and a snake-headed penis. With talons of a bird, and usually wings, although there's some depictions of him that don't show wings. He was believed to be the son of the god Hanabi. I don't know if I'm saying that one correctly either. But, so, that's a little brief history about Pazu. And just kind of reading the description, I was just like, that doesn't really sound exactly like the Labubu dolls, but maybe I was like, maybe they Disney-fied it, they took that a little Disney Imagineering and just made it a little bit more for children, kind of a weird, to actually take a demonic entity and turn it into a potentially something that children would want to run around with. But have been crazier things. Oh, I wasn't at the point where I was just like, maybe Christians are overreacting at this point. Sometimes, yes, they look a little evil. I was the first one to agree. Those things look like they could come alive in the middle of the night and murder you. Like, they just look a little evil, So I was kind of on the board of this point. Well, maybe Christians are just like feeding off of that and jumping the gun. Sometimes Christians can be a little, and I was raised Christian. I am a Christian. I've been around this for a long time. But sometimes Christians can be a little trigger happy to call things demonic, and when sometimes it's just humans being human. Sometimes I don't think humans take a lot of convincing to do evil things. Like, I don't think it's always the devil. Sometimes I think people are just evil all on their own. So I wasn't quite convinced, but I can show you some of the idols and amulets and stuff like that of this deity, and you can decide for yourself if it kind of looks like the Labubu dolls. I didn't really think it looked like the Labubu dolls, but again, maybe there was some Imagineering going on in there. Let's go into why did people think, why did Christians run with this idea that Pazu and Labubus are one and the same. It was the same inspiration. The creator of the Labubus took inspiration from Pazu, and it's because of this image, which looks like an ancient kind of manuscript drawing of Pazu, and everyone said that kind of looks like the Labubu dolls, which even when I first saw it in a YouTube video, I was just like, that kind of looks like the Labubu dolls. I'm very happy I didn't buy a Labubu doll, because that looks exactly like a Labubu doll. And so then when I started doing, something told me to do my own research for this video, and so I started doing and make my own video about this. So I started doing my own research, and I started looking into it, and I came across a TikTok that said that this was an AI generated video. However, when I would click on to actually look at the video, TikTok would just take me to like a curated list of like a bunch of like TikTokers talking about Labubu dolls, and I couldn't find actually that video talking about how it was AI generated. I don't know if that video got taken down, so then it was just giving me like alternative videos. I couldn't find that video. So then I ran my own thing. I went to a website that can test for if images are AI generated. And so I ran the image through, and it came back 99% certain that this image is AI generated. Somebody just typed in that they wanted a picture of Pazu that kind of looked like the Labubu dolls, so that they could go and make a video on TikTok about how it was taken from and all of that. So I have no idea why somebody would do that, other than it probably got them a lot of views because it has gone completely viral. People have completely run with it, and I think a lot of people have believed that, yeah, Labubus are taken from the demon deity Pazu. So, but again, the image that everyone says, yeah, looks very similar, again, is AI generated. And when you look at the actual relics, the ancient relics that we have of Pazu, it doesn't really look like the Labubu dolls to me. Yeah, which is why somebody had to go and do an AI generated thing, because the real life ones aren't convincing enough. So the Labubu dolls they're mischievous. They're described as mischievous rabbit-like toys created by Hong Kong artist Casing Lung. Lung? Am I saying that right? Ling? I hope I'm saying that correctly. I apologize. Lung? It's spelled Lung. You probably don't say Lung, right? Should we look that up real fast? I don't care about pronunciating a demon's name correct. But I would like to pronounce somebody's last name correctly. Pronounce with a short U. Let's listen to this YouTube video. Lung. Lung. That was anticlimactic, so I was right. Chasing Lung were originally made after the Nordic forest elves. So, taken from European in culture, not Middle Eastern culture, which is where Parazu is from. It's from ancient Middle Eastern culture, as opposed to ancient European culture. So, so I started looking into this. Is it being taken from elves any better? And what I found might actually shock you. So us modern day humans have a very different understanding of elves than what my ancestors would have. If I were to travel back in time and ask my ancestors about elves, they would tell me a very different story. But thanks to TV shows and movies like Lord of the Rings, we think of elves as ethereal, otherworldly, beautiful, wise, and most of all, good. They're often shown fighting against the forces of evil, the forces of darkness, as you will, but again, if I were to travel back in time and ask, fighting against the forces of evil may not be the response that I would get. In Old English, Old Norse, and Morganian, and then Old High German, and then also Middle Low German, elf means evil spirit. Very interesting, because if you were to ask anybody what elf means, modern, just like you were to go onto the street and do a little street interview and ask me, what does elf mean? Evil spirit would not be a response. Like, I don't think anybody would say evil spirit. I don't think one person would say evil spirit. But it's believed that the word elf all comes from the Proto-Germanic language, and that's why it all kind of means evil spirit in all these different languages. So elves commonly caused human illness. that was the belief, and you had to make sacrifices to them to get them to not do that, or to stop, or to remove the illnesses, and even many Europeans would actually worship them as gods, and until medieval law found it demonic and made it illegal. So it was up until that point that they were doing this, but this goes back pretty far back into European history. But he specifically said Norse, so I wanted to focus more on Norse mythology of elves, as opposed to the English or the Germanic or any other culture, because I imagine each one's going to be slightly different, even though they all seem to tend to believe that they potentially were good, hence evil spirit. But I digress. So in Old Norse, there are dark elves, and then there are light elves. Right. In Old Norse mythology, there are dark elves, and then there are light elves. So the two contrasting types of elves, the dark elves dwell within the earth themselves, but then it is believed that the lighter elves, that are fairer than the sun to look at, dwell within what we would probably translate into being heaven. When I was reading this, I was kind of intrigued. Kind of sounded like angels to me. We know that there are good angels. Angels that, sided with God. It sounds like...
Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Angels versus fallen angels, aka demons. It kind of sounds like their interpretation and their way of understanding angels to me. You have to realize at this point in Norse history and in European society, I don't know if they've been really exposed to Judeo-Christian beliefs and all of that, what would have been handed down to them orally from the Tower of Babel, after that splitting off and people going their own separate ways. And so things can get, kind of twisted and turned around and all of that. And it wasn't really medieval times that people had been introduced to Christianity and that understanding of the good versus evil from that perspective. So to me, it sounds like elves were their way of describing angels, and that there were good angels and there were bad angels. So in the book of Gallifreying, I don't know if I'm saying that right, in the Post Adara, chapter 17, which goes into more detail about the light versus dark elves living in heaven, and then the dark elves, being in the earth. and the light elves being brighter than the sun to look at, and all of that. So it kind of, that's where it's from. So, but again, it's kind of just, I don't know if there's anybody else that necessarily has drawn any other scholar that's necessarily drawn the conclusion that maybe, just maybe, elves are angels. I don't know. It just kind of sounds like it to me that it may have been their interpretation and them trying to figure things out without necessarily having, the Torah to read at this, at this time. I think that's what would have been available. Not sure if the New Testament would have been written, depending upon, how far back you're going into European history. They just would have had oral traditions handed down from them all the way back from, Tower of Babel times and all that, when people dispersed. And I don't know if you've ever played that, game of telephone, things can get distorted and things can change. But throughout all societies, again, as I said, you have the idea that there are good spirits and there are bad spirits, and that there is this battle of good versus evil. And to me, that shows that it's true, that there is a battle of good versus evil. It also points to us once having a shared culture, which we did before the Tower of Babel, and God confused the languages and people went their own ways and spread throughout the earth. So now we've established that potentially elves are angels, and now not all angels are fallen angels and are demons, but you have to look at the Labubus and ask yourself, which one do you think they're modeled after? They don't necessarily look, very, very nice. So we've been able to debunk the Pazu connection. So if you were worried about buying this for yourself, or maybe buying a Labubu for your child, you might feel a little bit better about it, knowing that it's not actually taken from the demonic deity Pazu. However, is it that they're based off of Nordic elves necessarily any better? If we can draw the conclusion that maybe Nordic elves are also taken from, fallen angels, is that any better? Is just because it's taken from European folklore and inspiration from European history and culture, and it still means evil spirit, does that make it any better? Does it make it any less evil? Is it still something that you would want to bring into your home, knowing that it's, modeled after that? Sure, it's not necessarily a replica of an idol of Pazu, but still people worshipped elves. People did worship them. They were ancient deities. They were just ancient deities in Europe. So I ask you, is it any better? I find it very frustrating that someone felt the need to lie about being a Middle Eastern deity as opposed to a European deity, because there was no reason to lie about it other than that it's easier to sensationalize and demonize ancient Middle Eastern deities. It's like, oh, this is an ancient, Middle Eastern deity, so it's seen as more evil than an ancient European deity. Like, it just makes for a better video. I don't know. I don't understand. It just, why lie about it? Other than it probably got them lots of clicks and likes on the internet, which is infuriating because now, you've lied about it. It's going to come out that it's a lie, that's an AI generated image and all of that, and it just makes Christians look crazy. People already think we're crazy, and there was just no reason to lie, because it still is taken from an ancient demonic deity that had ill intentions for humanity. So just a different culture. Why lie about it? Why? I mean, I hate to, correlate everything back to racism, but I mean, it kind of seems like potentially. there could be something, you know, of a racial tone there, but I'll leave that for you, the viewer, to decide. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide, between you and God, if you get a Labubu. Have been people that have talked about they get a Labubu and they have heightened anxiety. They kind of feel like its eyes follow them around. Now, is that their imagination kind of playing tricks with them, or is it literally because, yeah, it is taken and modeled after this ancient evil spirit taken from European culture? And it was modeled after that, and now you've, that people used to worship, and now you've taken that, image of it and brought it into your home, which, as a Christian, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to bring idols into your home or anything like that. So, and you can definitely make an argument that a Labubu, if it's modeled after an elf, and that the ancient Europeans worshipped the elves, that it is an idol then. So now it's up to you. Now you can say, well, people aren't necessarily worshiping them. People, you can definitely kind of argue that modern day worship looks a little bit different than ancient worship, but yeah, people have just gone crazy for these things, and people are spending an absorbent amount of money. People are reselling these things on eBay for hundreds of dollars, and people are buying them for hundreds of dollars. So if that's not crazy and worship like, behavior, I don't know what is, that you're willing to go to those kind of lengths to acquire something and possess it is very interesting, to say the least. So, again, up to you if you want to bring a Labubu into your home. But I would say that, to me, if I were to go and choose to go buy a Labubu, with the knowledge that I now have after doing all this research, and knowing that I know that they're potentially modeled after fallen angels, from Nordic folklore, not Middle Eastern, Nordic folklore, would it be good? Because I would be going again. It's one thing to do something in ignorance. It's another thing to do something despite of what you know, and just to go and do it anyways, and to ignore potentially the Holy Spirit telling me you shouldn't buy that, you shouldn't bring that into your home. It's not something a good thing. So, knowing what I know, and I bring it into my home anyways, I'm potentially, knowing what I know, I'm potentially leaving a door open for demonic forces to enter into my home. And why would I do that? Because I know, it's one thing to bring something in ignorance and just not really know, and just think this is just a doll. But now that I know what I know, the devil knows that I know what I know. He knows I made this video and all of that. And now he's not God. He doesn't know your thoughts. Only God knows your thoughts. But I made a video. So he knows that I've done this research. He knows I know, and I still have brought it into my home. That is most definitely leaving a door open and an invitation, and I would definitely never in a million years get a Labubu. Luckily, I thought those things were just ugly, and I have a picture of one pulled up on my computer, and it just made me uneasy. They made me uneasy from the beginning just to look at them, and not just because they're ugly. They, like the troll dolls, I never got an uneasy feeling around those, stupid little troll dolls. I just thought, well, that's an ugly little thing. But the Labubus, I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is. There was always something about the Labubus. I've never seen one in person. I've only just seen pictures, but even just the pictures of the Labubus, it just always made me just, my anxiety, from here, to just shoot up. And it would just make me feel very anxious and uneasy. And I think it's, you need to listen to that. You need to listen to your own, what oftentimes people would call human intuition. I think oftentimes the Holy Spirit speaks to us through our subconscious and through stuff like that. And I think if you ignore that, you're potentially ignoring stuff that the Holy Spirit is trying to tell you. So don't ignore, stuff like that, because if you ignore it, you're potentially ignoring the Holy Spirit telling you, hey, don't do that, or hey, maybe don't go down the alley right now, it won't be a good idea. Hey, maybe don't open, your car door right now. Maybe hang back a little bit for a little bit. Maybe, because the Holy Spirit might be trying to tell you something, and you might try to say, oh, logically, just try to brush it off. But listen. I say listen to it. Listen to it, because I think I think a lot of times your subconscious is the Holy Spirit trying to tell you something. And modern day humans in science, we just kind of brush it off as, you know, paranoia or human intuition or whatever, you know. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on the Labubus. Do you think they're cute? Do you think they're ugly? Did they make you uneasy when you first saw them, as they did I? What do you think about the whole line about the Pazu situation? I just find it so unnecessary, considering it was just unnecessary, because you could still correlate it to a demonic deity taken from European culture. Maybe not like a singular deity. Maybe people wanted it to be like a singular deity instead of like a group of deities. I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!